I have a strange history of this game. While I was playing Devil May Cry, I had videos in the background and one of them was on Alice. And I wasn't gonna play it. I don't know why, I just thought the game looks too pretty to be an actual good game. And then I heard some of the plot, like, wait, this is actually kind of fire. And then I saw the gameplay and I was like, wait, this actually looks like a good game. So I tried to find ways to get it. It wasn't on PC at the time, so I had to get Xbox. And then someone I knew had a PC version of the game on a HDD, so they just gave it to me. And then I played the game, and it's definitely one of my favorite games. Alice essentially is a hack and slash game, which is a sequel to another game called American McGee Alice. You don't need to play the first one. You kind of get the gist of what's going on. And this is the order I played it, so I can kind of just say that, yeah, you definitely don't need to play the first game. Even though I think they're both equally good in their own right, but you don't need to play them. As the name suggests, a lot of things are very Alice in Wonderland-esque, but a little bit darker. But as American McGee said, the book kind of is a little bit dark. He said he didn't really need to look for that much inspiration because he already has the content there. Coming up, Alice Madness Returns is a hack and slash game where you pretty much do the same formula as the first game, go to different worlds and defeat the villain, which I'm not gonna say because that's obviously spoilers. It is a hack and slash game, but it's a very simplistic one. A lot of hack and slash games have combos and this one doesn't really have any. There is a difference in animation of when you use the hobby horse and then the Vorpal blade, but that's pretty much it from all I know. You can use teeth to upgrade your weapons, which is the currency. If you actually ration out all of the teeth, you can upgrade all of them, which is something that in games I don't really like, the fact that you can max out everything. In Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, it's pretty much impossible to get all your stats upgraded, and I think that's really good for different playthroughs because, you know, in a different playthrough you might want to focus on something else than on another thing. Obviously you can change the order in which you level things up, but it's relatively easy to get teeth. This game has some new features as well. It has a triple jump feature, which I think is really good. I like it. I don't know why, it just feels really good. You can hover if you hold up the jump button. I know some people don't like this, but me personally, I think it's amazing. People don't even like the platforming in the game. I think this one and the first one are both really good and feel really smooth. Unfortunately, you can't get the game at 60 FPS. You kind of have to do some encoding, which it is in the... There is a YouTube video on it, so it shouldn't be that bad. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. This game has a dash feature, or like an evade. It's really good for, you know, evading attacks, obviously. And there's these enemies called the butterflies, which if they attack you, you have to do it. Otherwise, you'll literally just be stun locked. You can also do it while jumping, which is kind of useful for speed running, because you don't want that maximum momentum. It does kind of give you momentum as well when you walk. I felt that. It's very subtle, but you can feel a little bit of momentum. People say the gameplay feels weird with the platforming as well. I think everything feels really smooth. There's no complaints for the movement, and there's just no complaints for the gameplay features. Apart from some things, like I did want there to be more stuff with it, but that's really it. Also, I forgot to talk about the Hysteria feature, which essentially is just, when you're at low health, you can use this to get out of tight situations. When you kill enemies, they give you more health. It's 100% guaranteed that they'll give you health. You can kind of exploit this with the hobby horse. Also, there's a hint feature, which is a reference to the first game as well. This one isn't that useful, but you just kind of use it just to hear Cheshire speak, because the VA is just that good.
About time too, Alice. Perfect. When you're not on edge, you're taking up too much space. But you know I can be. Abandon that hope. A new law reigns in this wonderland, Alice. It's very rough justice all round. We're at risk here. You be on your guard.
I think if you play the game normally, on normal mode, and how everything is meant to be played, like on your first try, looking for everything, the game is super easy. Even on nightmare mode, which I played on my second playthrough, it's still easy. It might be because I played harder hack and slash games, but this is probably like the easiest one I've played. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but I just kind of wish they made things a little bit harder. But I guess it's meant to kind of go towards the casual gamers, because even the first game, it wasn't that hard. The only times things were hard was when it was unintentional, like some of the platforming. But this is about Alice Madness Returns and not American McGee Alice. There are skins in the game which kind of can give you advantages or disadvantages. One of them, when you get hit, you lose teeth instead of your health, which, if you didn't know, teeth is essentially just the currency, so you can't upgrade your weapons if you get hit a lot. And I do think you do lose some health, but I don't think it's that much of a difference to notice, because I did that playthrough on nightmare mode and I still managed to get every upgrade in the end. There's some that enemies don't drop health. That one's actually kind of hard. There are way less weapons in Alice 2 than Alice 1, but this is balanced out by all 4 weapons being useful, while the ones in the first game being kind of, well, I wouldn't say that they're bad, but a lot of them get bad over time and are just bad at the start. But these ones, they're all useful in their own way. The Vorpal Blade is a melee attack, which upgraded increases the string combos and I think the damage. I'm kind of disappointed. It would have been cool to see Alice do some cool like DMC combos, but each hit feels really satisfying, and especially the knife stream that comes when you actually hit the blade, and the last attack feels very heavy by the slowdown and the sound design. This is a good all-round weapon, and I think it's probably the second best weapon. The Pepper Grind is the second weapon that you get. It's just a ranged weapon. It's really good for keeping some enemies away from you, because some of them get stun locked by them and won't run towards you anymore. The damage is relatively bad, but it makes sense since it's a ranged weapon. But I do think it's probably like the worst weapon. The next weapon you get is a Hobby Horse, which is just a heavy version of the Vorpal Blade. It's really good. The damage you dish out is really good, and you can also do a glitch where you just become a Beyblade. I think the video got deleted, but this was definitely a method used for speedruns, and I don't know how to do it, so I can't recreate it, but you know, it's a thing. Definitely good for damage, and the DLC version makes it so every time you hit it, you gain health, which was a very big exploit with the Hysteria mode, which was again used in speed. But this is probably the third best weapon. And then what I think is the best weapon is the Teapot. Now the Teapot is definitely the heaviest damage. I couldn't find anything in the code to like give out actual numbers, but you can definitely tell this one dishes out a lot of shit. The AoE, the range, people say the range isn't good. I disagree. If you charge it enough, the range is amazing. The damage plus the AoE just makes it overpowered. I know there's a limited quantity you can use, but to be honest, you could use this primarily and then the Vorpal Blade secondary, wait for the Teapot to recharge, and then just keep tapping the shoot button, because even the light versions do crazy damage. I think this weapon, like uncharged, shouldn't do that much damage, and especially since it breaks a lot of armor. A lot of the new enemies require armor to be broken, and then just anything that hits it would work. Armor is kind of weird in this game, so that's the point of this weapon, to break armor. So it kind of does make sense, but the fact that you can dish out so much of these is crazy. You need to, if you don't break the armor, literally everything you do won't count. You can either do these with the Teapot or the Hobby Horse. It's definitely more recommended with this, with the teapot, because the hobby horse is kind of slow and sometimes it doesn't even break. You need a couple hits in. With the teapot, you just need one. Alice had a beta trailer, which sadly, it doesn't really show how the game could have been. You can tell that there's a lot of art style changes, and I kind of wish they kept some of the things, but with the art style stuff, I think they perfected it. I don't think Alice looks bad or anything. The way they did it with how the game got released, I think is amazing. They just perfected some of the stuff. And if the game came out looking like this, I wouldn't be mad. Especially since it still looks good. And some of the world stuff still looks good. You can tell, even if it's the same world, that it's completely different from the final piece, because some of these buildings you haven't seen. There's some features as well. Like there's a part with Alice sliding across a building. Obviously with the way that the game is, that's not Wonderland Alice, it's just normal Alice, which is weird. But I really would have liked that, since IRL segments, when you play the game, they're kind of boring, but some of them have really good Easter eggs and foreshadowing. But some of them are literally just walk to place, talk to person, go to Wonderland. You can even tell that there's something different with the game, with Alice having a ranged attack with the Vorpal Blade and a targeting feature. I mean, the game does have a targeting feature, but the UI is different, and that could mean something else. The combo strings in this one look really different as well. I really would have liked to see this. The combat roll looks really good as well, but that could have just been the evade attack. But I feel like the evade makes more sense given Alice's elegance that they're trying to portray. But I think it looks more badass, to be honest. And you can see the Vorpal Blade looks exactly like the one from the first game. The second one had a redesign. I think the redesign is so much better. It gives more of a majestic feel. And then there's a whip type weapon, which it looks amazing. I don't know how they would have balanced this, especially given how overpowered all the weapons are. Maybe they would have made it done like really bad damage, but this would have been really cool to have. Pretty sure in the third game there is going to be an actual whip weapon, so we'll see how it is. There's also new enemies that didn't make it, and I think there are some soundtracks as well. And there's this UI with a bunch of weapons, and we don't really know what these mean, but they were definitely going for a more convoluted type of style, which it would have been so cool. Because this game, both Alice games are pretty simple, like combat wise and tactic wise. I mean, for the second game, you do kind of have to think of who you need to kill first to prioritize, but you still kind of play with the same play style in a game. This one kind of looks like there can be different ways to play this game. The beta does show what the game could have been, which is sad. It's definitely not American McGee's fault, because I know he definitely would have wanted this, and it's probably why he's making Alice 3, to actually get the perfect game. But the beta does look amazing, and mixed in with what we've seen there and the final product, this game would have been so good. There aren't many characters in the second game that have enough depth to actually talk about them like that, but Alice is still amazing. The way she's written and how she is a badass character without her being just an emotionless husk is really good. In both games, she still has that feeling. I'm not really one to actually know how something like Survivor's Guilt feels, but the way it's portrayed, it feels fairly realistic. It's not glorified like how a lot of things are now. Alice is a very interesting character, and probably probably one of like the best female protagonists in any game. I think the Cheshire Cat is still good. He's only there to kind of just make remarks and slight comedy relief and setting the tone. We don't really know anything about him that much, but everyone should like him. The Red Queen returns, and she definitely gives a villainous aura and is kind of the same in the last game. You can tell that they've changed, but still are relatively the same. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but that's the only way I can. New chapter for my game came out. It's about 20 to 30 minutes. It's a sequel to my other game, so you have to play that first, which in total will probably be about 50 minutes to an hour. And you can play the other seasons, but they're very optional. Ori in Wonderland is obviously inspired by Alice in Wonderland as well, and American McGee Alice had a big influence on my story. It's obviously very different. This one has a lot of Chinese culture. The only thing that's relatively the same is that she has a Wonderland, and that's actually it. For American McGee, I guess she has a knife, but it's a very different knife. Showing the game any support would be kind of helpful since it's kind of underperforming, but I'm not really in it for views or anything. I just like making the game. It doesn't bother me that much, but I would like to get feedback so I can make it even better for people and for people to actually enjoy it. The reason I'm not going to talk about the story first is just because of spoilers, but I'm just going to talk about the worlds first and the enemies and what I think about them, and I might compare them to the first game. I kind of didn't want to talk about it because of how early in the game it is and how much it isn't, because it's only in the game for like a good 20 minutes. But the Vale of Tears level is a very good level. Aesthetically, everything is perfect. It's meant to be a reference to another level in the first Alice game, and it even shares the same name, or at least the OST name. It sets the mood for a sequel, and then subverts your expectations by it being destroyed in the same way that it was in the first game. But when we saw in the first game, it was destroyed and then it was fixed. In this one, it was fixed and then it was destroyed. Okay, so the first world is a steampunk-esque world, and I think this is probably the best world ever. And especially the dress that you get. With every new world, you get a new dress. You get DLC ones as well, but the PC one doesn't even come with the DLC, so I'm not going to count that. I could probably just talk about the DLC dresses later. From the concept design, this is very American McGee Alice. This could have been in the first game, and there were levels similar to it. Like the Asylum one kind of felt like this, but this is just a way better version of it. Especially with the color of the brownish yellow and the glowing red of the buildings. It's just amazing. Now going over the enemies in chapter 1 is the Insidious Ruin. These are just kind of the grunts of the game. The design is pretty good. I'm trying to think if Alice 1 had any enemies like this. I think all enemies were unique to their world, and I don't think there were any reoccurring enemies. But it makes sense given the context for the plot, which again, I won't spoil until I go to the spoiler section. But yeah, they're pretty good. They die in I think they die in one hit in normal. No, they die in one string in normal and a couple strings in Nightmare. These people shouldn't give you too much trouble, as even if they're in big crowds. The bolterflies are annoying, but I think that's the purpose. They're kind of in this beehive, and if you don't destroy the beehive, these bolterflies come out, and when they hit you, you kind of get stun locked and you have to dash to go away. These enemies are really good for just annoying you, and when they're mixed in with other enemies, it makes you think of what to prioritize. I always prioritize these because they just always get in your way. The Slithering Ruin are just... they're even weaker versions. They literally die in one hit. They have a chance of appearing in crates that you can destroy to get currency or health. They shouldn't give you too much trouble, even when it's like bunched in with a bunch of people. The Madcaps are just these like goblin, there we go. They're these goblin things, and there are different kinds, but I'm just going to categorize all of them at once because they kind of do the same thing. You kind of have to wait for them to be open and then attack. This is really good to prevent people being overly aggressive, which I kind of do that. So I usually have trouble with these people. You kind of have to wait for them to be in their recovery frames to actually do shit to them. I think these enemies are probably one of my favorites as well, just because of how they go against the way I usually play hack and slash games, with being patient, and it doesn't really break the flow. It's just more, it keeps you on your toes because some of these people are really fast. Even with the slowdown, it's really fast. I don't think it's broken or needs to be fixed. I think it's a perfect pace of being fast and not too slow. Next is the iPod, which they have a lot of health. The way to usually get to these guys is you need to shoot their eyes with any ranged attack and then just go in with the Vorpal Blade. If they're at a distance, they will throw T at you, which does a lot of damage, has pretty good AoE, and can kind of stun lock you. So if you're getting jumped and these things just throw a teapot at you, you're kind of... but that's kind of on nightmare mode. On normal mode, you should be alright. It still does a chunk of damage, but shouldn't be too bad. Next is the Menacing Ruin, which I think they were meant to be a boss, but I don't know. They're just bigger ruins. They are hard to kill, grouped in with a bunch of people, but I wouldn't say that they're the first priority to kill. They're definitely more annoying enemies. These ones you just kind of have to dodge. They're not really aggressive. They're really easy to read and predict. But if you mess up, you're pretty much good as gone. I think this is without a doubt like my least favorite part of the game. I don't know why, things just seem super slow. The thing I do like was the IRL segment with the actual enemies appearing, which kind of foreshadowed the level in general, and Alice's sanity kind of being questioned. I think the dress is pretty cool. It's definitely the most unique. I don't think it's the best one, but definitely is like the most out there, unique one. The Lost Soul are these enemies that throw bombs at you. These enemies are super fucking annoying. Grouped up with a bunch of people, they can really dish out a lot of damage and be annoying. The way to combat these people is they're completely invincible until you shoot one of the bombs, and you have to shoot it before they throw it, otherwise it will just be a loop, and then they get dazed out and you have to attack them as much as possible. They have a lot of health too, so these enemies are just, yeah. Drowned Sailors is essentially the same thing, but it's with like a knife attack, which I think is more bearable. Drifting Ruins are these things that float in the air, and it's another thing when they're invincible until they attack, until you have to attack them. You have to shoot them with a ranged weapon, obviously. Sadly, she doesn't have any air combos. You have to shoot them in the air, they'll fall down, and and then you can attack them. You can use an umbrella. The umbrella essentially is sort of a parry mechanic, but the reverse of a parry, because in normal games you can't parry physical attacks. With this you can parry projectiles, and there is a wide window for the parry. Like you can press the button for a long time and it'll still parry. I kind of don't like that. I wouldn't mind that on normal, but on Nightmare I wish the timing was a bit stricter. If you do try to parry one of the, like, a physical attack, the umbrella like folds and then you get open for another hit. I literally do not think there's a way to like jump cancel it or dash cancel it. Like, you're fucked. The cannon crab is essentially the other ruin where they had the 3 heads and you have to destroy the heads, but instead of the heads it's like his crab arm and it shoots a projectile which you have to deflect, or you can hobby horse it to death, but that takes way too long. So deflecting the projectile is definitely the best option. The colossal ruin is essentially like the closest thing to this game we'll get to a boss, sadly. There were definitely a lot of boss concepts, and people have talked about this a lot in a lot of other reviews, so I don't want to get too in-depth into it. But the TLDR is that it's just the other ruin, but with a lot more health, and they can kind of command grab you. Chapter 3 is this like Japanese world, which could be tribute to the actual like companies. Some of them were, I think, Japanese, from what I've heard. The dress is really good. I think this world is perfect as well. The enemies are fun as hell, and the soundtrack's really good. It's really ambient. The samurai boss are just enemies that you have to beat their shield, and then they're pretty much open. They dash at projectiles, but if you get them to a corner, you can just use the teapot and they can't do anything about it. The Daimyo Wasp is just the Samurai Wasp, but just on steroids. It's the same pattern, but they definitely have a lot of more range and more health. Finding these guys are really fun, and I think they're pretty good balance of being not too OP and not too weak. The Wasp Archer is just the drifting ruin, but stronger, like a lot stronger. They can dish out a lot of damage, and you have to wait for them to kind of be vulnerable, because they can dash away from attacks too, and you can't use melee. The Ink Wasps are essentially just the Bolterflies, but even more annoying because they blend into the actual map. These enemies are cool though. These enemies are annoying to fight against in big areas. On their own, they're alright, because they usually don't do any damage. Well, they do some damage, but it's so minimal to the point where it doesn't even matter. Chapter 4 is a big callback to the first game because of all, the card theme stuff. I think this world is really good as well. All of the worlds are really good, just apart from Chapter 2. They were kind of, I don't know, I think just water levels in games are just cursed, because literally every single world in this game is amazing. But Chapter 2, the first enemy you go against is the Card Guard, which is an enemy in the first game, but they're just like a withered version of it. So instead of them being normal humans, well, obviously they're not normal humans, they're literally like card people, but they're the same person, very bloodied up. They have a hole in their chest, represented by the card symbol, and they have a skull on their face just to represent that they're dead. And even in their intros, they kind of rise up like a zombie. Seeing this for the first time, not knowing what American McGee's Alice was, I was really confused, because it kind of seemed like it was something big that I was missing out on. And then playing American McGee's Alice, I realized that for the plot of the first game, it makes a lot of sense why they return, and I'm really glad that they didn't make the whole thing a callback. They just did one world for a callback and like one enemy, and it's not even like it's the exact same map. The castle in this game and the old game are very different. It's still the same castle. I'm really glad that they didn't just rehash everything. The execution is weird because you can't kill him, and I was locked for like a whole hour figuring out how to actually kill him, because I was really happy for a boss fight, but no, it's one of those fights that you have to avoid, and you literally just can't win it because it doesn't have an actual health bar. The armored card guard is like a Dark Souls boss, essentially. Well, it kind of plays like one. You have to dodge his heavy attack and then attack it from his weak point, which is the hole in their chest. Using this with the teapot dishes out a lot of damage, and these guys die really easily. If you do play this game, I would recommend just not using the teapot, because realizing it, a lot of these enemies can just get one tapped by the teapot. Chapter 5, I think, is a really good chapter to actually display a lot of themes in this game, and has a lot of plot relevancy and actual foreshadowing to the twist and who the killer actually was. Obviously, this has a lot of spoilers, so there'll probably be a timestamp or something. This world is meant to make you feel uncomfortable, because the topic that they're actually talking about isn't a good one. Talking about things like SA in games, it's never really done that well, especially in a lot of games that I know of. They never really do it well. I think this one does it pretty well. It's like intentionally meant to be fucked up, but not in a way that's... It's meant to be fucked up, and they don't like make jokes out of it or anything, or make it seem like it's a good thing. You're meant to be scared of what's going on, and I think that's why they gave this world the most messed up designs and just broken ones, and especially the world as well. The world is really messed up. A lot of broken houses, burnt things, which, you know, again can foreshadow the twist. Dulgos are just essentially another heavy hitter character. They can do pretty good damage if you get caught off guard. You just are meant to attack them until you burn off a lot of their clothes, and then you attack their heart, or something that's meant to be a heart. It's kind of hard to tell. The next enemy is just essentially another flight enemy, the bitch baby. Yeah, they do the same thing. They fly up, they throw projectiles at you, but they charge up an attack of them running into you, and if you get hit by this, it can do some pretty good damage, especially if there's a lot of them. You can get kind of stun locked if a lot of them hit you at once. But that's pretty much it for the enemies and the worlds. I think in total, it's kind of hard to compare both worlds in 1 and 2. I think in terms of design, 2 is definitely doing a lot better with the enemy designs. I think 1 has more unique traits for what the enemies actually do. A lot of enemies you can just fight in the same way. In Alice 1, you kind of have to think about it specifically with each enemy. I think every world is equally as good. Obviously, with Alice 1 being an early 2000s game, there's a lot of things that they weren't able to do due to budgeting or technological reasons, and they did that to their advantage by giving like a sort of empty space feeling with this. This is like something they don't really have much restrictions on. I think past like the Xbox 360, PS3 eras, there's pretty much no restrictions to what they can and can't do, and they take advantage of that as well here. To sum it up, I think Alice Madness Returns is an amazing game, but there were definitely more creative things American McGee had in mind, and maybe he wasn't allowed to do it due to EA or something, or budget reasons. But Alice Asylum is a project which is the first Alice game, which will come out soon. He just needs the IP from EA, but in a recent stream, he's been kind of careful with his words. I'm going to assume something good happened, and he just can't legally say it, or something along those lines, where it's potentially a higher chance he could get it at least, because this is a very ambitious project that he definitely wants to get out. And he also has a lot of merch for Alice as well as other things. But Alice Madness Returns is a game that I usually go back to every year, at least, even though I've only discovered this game in 2020. I have played the game 3 or 4 times, and I never really get bored. The game does have some flaws, just like any other game, but a lot of them can be looked past by the amazing aesthetic, how smooth the gameplay feels, the amazing art style, and everything else. That's kind of it for everything. I did kind of want to talk about the OST and a lot of other small things, but I didn't really know how to arrange it well. It kind of seemed like a big portion of it was just talking about the design. Everyone kind of knows that the OST is good, so I didn't really feel like I needed to say it because everyone knows that it's good. I don't know what I want to do next. I might try to do Vampire, or I might talk about American McGee Alice.